No, you run for arrest.
Get off! Get off! Get off! I'll fuck you! Get off! Get off! I want to say listen, can you say that?
For several years.
Pretend it never happened. That'd be tough. That'd be tough. If I could, no, I don't think I could do that. Even if I was absolutely fucking shit scared, I couldn't pretend it never happened.
I knew about it.
I don't know where you are in the world, but we've had a terrible year. I don't want to be that bloke that complains, but it's been...
Picture this, a teenager in handcuffs, police swarming a McDonald's, and Ricky Gervais tearing into the government for turning Britain into a parody of justice. Her crime, buying a Big Mac after 5 p.m, unbelievable as it sounds. This actually happened, and it's left the public asking how a nation once known for fairness and common sense could sink into such absurdity. While violent criminals and predators walked the streets largely unchecked, the full force of Stars policing came crashing down on a schoolgirl whose only mistake was being hungry at the wrong time.
This meeting, we will establish a national capability across police forces to tackle violent disorder.
For Gervais, this wasn't just another news story, it was proof that the system is broken. A Britain where ordinary citizens, even children, are treated like enemies of the state, while real threats are left unchecked. This wasn't policing, meant to protect people. It was policing meant to control, to send a message. And that message has shaken the entire nation.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You will not get George Clooney or Steven Spielberg or anyone doing this shit like I do. Never. Maybe once.
For years, Ricky Gervais kept politics at arm's length. He let others debate party lines while he focused on comedy, animal rights, and calling out everyday hypocrisy. But this arrest cut straight through that distance. It wasn't abstract policy. Anymore, it was raw injustice unfolding in the most absurd way possible. A teenage girl, treated like a hardened criminal, over a fast food curfew. Gervais seized the moment because it exposed something far bigger. Starmer's Britain, many argue, has created a two-tier justice system. On one side, ordinary law-abiding citizens face the full weight of state power for petty, almost laughable infractions. On the other, genuine threats from violent gangs. Two predatory networks slip through with little interference. This, he said, was the line that could not be ignored. His voice cut through because he framed the arrest not as a minor misstep, but as a symbol of everything broken in the government's priorities. If entire squads of police can storm a McDonald's to rough up a child, while whole neighborhoods live in fear of criminals who walk free, then the system isn't just flawed, it's upside down. When Keir Starmer promised tougher patrols and stronger neighborhood policing, many assumed it meant safer streets, faster responses, and a crackdown on those terrorizing communities. Instead, the reality looks very different. In practice, those promises have translated into scenes like this: officers swarming a McDonald's to detain a teenager. Meanwhile, families across Britain still live with the fear of gangs carrying knives, burglars raiding homes, and predators preying on the vulnerable. The image of law enforcement tackling a child over a curfew violation is not proof of stronger policing, it is proof of misplaced priorities. This heavy-handed approach reveals a disturbing truth. Force is applied where it's easiest, not where it's needed most. Real criminals require courage, resources, and leadership to confront. Harassing ordinary citizens, on the other hand, is quick, simple, and looks like action on paper. For the government, it is a way to claim success while sidestepping the real battles that matter. And so, Starmer's Britain finds itself trapped in a grim paradox. More police on the streets, yet less safety where it truly counts. Tensions are rising in this very clash. 8 officers were left injured.
We will always facilitate peaceful protest. We will also always make sure that the voice of our community is heard. What we will not tolerate is those random acts of violence that we saw last night.
Arrests have already been made.
When outrage like this erupts, Starmer's instinct is rarely to engage directly. He stays silent until public anger reaches boiling point. And even then, his words tend to deflect responsibility. This time, the message that filtered out was simple. If people dislike the way things are being run, they are free to leave Britain. That single line speaks volumes. Instead of acknowledging the flaws in his policies, instead of showing concern for ordinary families caught in the crossfire, his solution was exile. In Starmer's Britain, it is not the leadership that must change, it is the people who must adapt or go. For figures like Ricky Gervais, this posture is the very definition of arrogance. A leader's duty is to safeguard the citizens under his authority, not dismiss them as disposable. Silence in the face of injustice, followed by a cold shrug to critics, only reinforces the perception that Starmer governs from a distance ensalaried by privilege. Blind to the everyday struggles of those outside Westminster, what should have been an opportunity to reassure the public instead became yet another reminder of how out of touch his government has become. Across Britain, entire districts live under the shadow of violent gangs, grooming networks, and armed criminals who operate openly. Families know which streets to avoid after dark, and even some police officers quietly admit there are neighborhoods they will not patrol. These are the areas where protection is needed most. Yet under Starmer's leadership, they remain dangerously neglected. Instead of directing resources into hotspots where machete-wielding gangs terrorize communities, the government finds it easier to crack down on ordinary people. A schoolgirl in McDonald's is an easy target. A 12-year-old proudly waving her nation's flag at school is an easy target. These are the offenses the system seems eager to punish because they don't risk headlines about uncontrolled migration, rising crime, or failed integration policies. This is why Ricky Gervais's criticism struck such a chord. He framed the Big Mac arrests not as a laughable anomaly, but as a symbol of how the government's policing strategy has been flipped upside down. Where courage is needed, there is silence. Where restraint is needed, there is force. The result is a tutor system. Leniency for those who pose real threats, and zero tolerance for those who pose none.
Did you murder that person the other night? Yeah. What? Let me just take. What? Yes. Okay. I'm going to call the police now. I'd be hard to tricks. Oh my God. Well, I don't know. I mean...
As if one schoolgirl's humiliation were not enough, another incident soon followed, this time in the classroom. During a school culture day where students were encouraged to celebrate their heritage, a 12-year-old proudly arrived in a Union Jack dress. She had even prepared a speech about British traditions, the ritual of tea drinking, the famous obsession with weather, the courtesy and politeness that once defined national character. She never got the chance to say a word. Teachers pulled her aside, branded her appearance inappropriate, and isolated her until her father was called to collect her. The crime? Wearing the flag of her own country, in her own country, on a day supposedly designed to embrace diversity. The hypocrisy was staggering. Every other culture could be displayed and celebrated, yet the majority culture was cast as something to be ashamed of. Her father later described the experience as nothing short of discrimination. A message to his daughter that her identity was unwelcome in the very place meant to nurture it. For many parents, this was a chilling example of how institutions now bend over backwards to avoid offending outsiders while undermining the confidence of British children in their own heritage. Incidents like these are not random. They form part of a growing pattern. Ordinary citizens being shamed, silenced, or punished for expressing identities and freedoms that once defined British life. A child arrested over a burger, another humiliated for wearing her nation's flag. These are not isolated embarrassments. They are warning signs of a society being reshaped from the ground up. The strategy is subtle but effective. Each episode sends a signal. Speak out, stand tall or step out of line, and the system will come down on you, not the real criminals. Over time, these small humiliations build into something larger. People stop questioning, communities grow hesitant, children learn early that pride in their own culture is a liability, not a strength. Ricky Gervais pointed out that this is how authoritarian systems tighten their grip, not through dramatic crackdowns overnight, but through a slow erosion of rights and freedoms, brick by brick. By targeting those who are easiest to intimidate, the government ensures that a culture of fear seeps into everyday life. And yet, the more ordinary voices are silenced, the louder figures like Gervais become, refusing to let this new normal go unchallenged. At the centre of Ricky Gervais' outrage is a principle bigger than politics: human rights and free speech. For him, everything, whether debates about law, morality, or government policy, comes back to this foundation. The right to speak freely, to question authority, and to live without fear of punishment for harmless expression is not a luxury. It is the bedrock of a free society. That is why these incidents struck such a nerve. A teenager detained over food and another silenced for wearing her own flag show how far the state is drifting from that foundation. Free speech is being redefined as something conditional, granted only to those who follow the approved line. The rest face shame, intimidation, or worse. Gervais refuses to accept that. His platform gives him the freedom to speak without fear of losing a job or being dragged away in handcuffs, and he uses it to highlight the creeping authoritarianism that ordinary people experience in smaller, everyday humiliations. For him, comedy and activism overlap here. By ridiculing the absurdities of Starmer's Britain, he is exposing truths that many politicians would rather bury, and in doing so, he has become a lightning rod for those who feel the system is closing in on them. When governments choose to police the harmless while ignoring the dangerous, something fundamental begins to break. People lose trust in the very institutions meant to protect them. They stop believing that the law serves justice, and instead see it as a tool of control. That is the direction Britain is sliding toward under Starmer's watch. Every new case, whether a schoolgirl manhandled in a fast food restaurant or another shamed for wearing her nation's flag, chips away at public faith. It creates the sense that loyalty to the ruling party matters more than loyalty to the people, and once that perception sets in, the damage is almost impossible to reverse. This is why voices like Gervais matter. He is not simply mocking the government for being out of touch. He is voicing a frustration millions quietly feel but are too afraid to express. In doing so, he forces uncomfortable truths into the open, that Britain is starting to look less like a confident democracy and more like a managed society where obedience is prized above freedom. If this continues, the next generation will inherit a country where speaking your mind is a liability, not a right. And unless more people stand up now, that shift will become permanent. This is bigger than one arrest or one school event. These moments reveal the trajectory of Starmer's Britain, a place where the harmless are punished while the dangerous walk free, where children are humiliated for showing pride in their own country, and where citizens are told to leave if they don't like it. Ricky Gervais has become a symbol of resistance to that drift. By turning outrage into sharp commentary, he has forced people to confront how far the nation has strayed from its principles. What was once unthinkable, police storming a McDonald's to cuff a teenager, has become reality. What was once celebrated, wearing the Union Jack, has become forbidden. The lesson is clear. Freedom erodes not in one sweeping blow but through a series of small humiliations, each one making the next easier to accept. That is why speaking out now matters, because if silence becomes the norm, the Britain inherited by future generations will be unrecognisable. The choice facing the public is stark. Either this trend is challenged, while voices like Gervais are still loud enough to rally resistance, or the nation will continue down a path where fear replaces freedom and obedience replaces identity. There's more happening beneath the surface than most people realise. Subscribe and stay tuned. We've got the stories others won't tell.